Till now, we have seen the various socio, political, and economic causes or reasons behind the outbreak of the Second World War. But when we started the discussion on the various causes, I mentioned how every war or any conflict starts with a trigger incident. This is known as the immediate cause of that conflict or war. The Second World War was no different. Second World War also had its own trigger incident, the incident which broke out the Second World War. And that was Hitler's invasion of Poland and the demand for the Danzig corridor. So let us look into this immediate cause in detail. After the end of the First World War, the major empires of Europe, the Russian Empire, the German Empire, and the Austro-Hungarian Empire declined. And out of them emerged many independent nations. Out of the Austro-Hungarian Empire emerged Austria, Hungary, Yugoslavia, and Czechoslovakia. A similar situation occurred for the German Empire as well, as a lot of its land was taken away. So it is no longer powerful enough to again declare a war against Europe. That is because, if you remember, the primary blame of the First World War was given upon German shoulders. Now, speaking of the decline of empires and the territorial rearrangements, now we come to a topic of what exactly was the Danzig corridor, how it caused the Second World War, how we demand for it, and how it caused and how it played a crucial role in the outbreak of the Second World War. Before we can understand what the Danzig corridor was, we have to understand the independence or the birth of Poland. You see, Poland was created as a new nation after the First World War by taking lands from the German, Austro-Hungarian, and the Russian empires. Over here you can see the nation of Poland, and Poland was created, as mentioned, by taking lands from Germany, from Austro-Hungary, and even from Russia. Poland was created as an independent nation by the Treaty of Versailles. The Treaty of Versailles also promised Poland an access to the sea. The sea in question over here is the Baltic Sea right here. Now, an access to the sea is economically beneficial for a nation, as it gives it access to the resources of the sea and also various trading routes. But a question might come to your mind. If you see the map of Poland, Poland is a completely landlocked country. How on earth was Poland to be given an access to the Baltic Sea? So now there was a conundrum. The access to the Baltic Sea, as promised in the Treaty of Versailles, was not such an easy task. So what do you think the Allied nations did? Did they bring the sea to Poland? No, they did the exact opposite. They brought Poland to the sea. But bringing Poland to the sea was not an easy task. Even more land had to be taken from Germany. In order to give Poland access to the Baltic Sea, a piece of land had to be carved out of Germany. But while carving this piece of land out, it was effectively partitioning Germany into two parts. On one part was the nation of Germany itself, over here, and the other part was the region of East Prussia, which still was a part of Germany, but by carving out this portion over here, Germany was effectively partitioned into two. But this was not like a conventional partition, where the two parts are administered by two different governments. East Prussia was still a part of mainland Germany and was administered by the same government. But it lost all contacts, all land and rail connections to the rest of Germany, and therefore it became sort of an island region of Germany. But it was not suspended on water, it was suspended on land. This made the Germans very angry, as they knew that leaving a region like this without any direct connections could make administration difficult and could also leave such a region more susceptible to enemy expansions. Therefore, the Germans were not happy with this decision. However, the Allied nations still proceeded with this. This region of land which was carved out of Germany, which partitioned Germany into two parts, was known as the Poland Corridor, the Poland's access to the sea, or also the Danzig Corridor. So as mentioned, this piece of land which was carved out of Germany was known as the Polish Corridor, the Poland Corridor, the Polish Corridor to the sea, or simply the Danzig corridor. This is because within this piece of land lied the rich port city of Danzig, which was primarily German inhabited. Now you can see the city of Danzig over here in this picture. Now the city of Danzig remained a free city under the League of Nations. The city of Danzig was no longer under the administration of Germany, but it was not given to any other nation as well. It remained under the mandate of the League of Nations. The rest of the Polish corridor, however, was handed over to Poland so that they have unrestricted access to the Baltic Sea. As mentioned, there was immense discontentment among the Germans as they could not take this decision. This is because this handover not only made Germany lose its territory to Poland, it also effectively partitioned Germany into two parts. The Germans were also unhappy because they lost unrestricted access to the city of Danzig, which was primarily German inhabited. Hitler was never in favor of the handover of the Danzig corridor to Poland and always resented this decision. When he came to power, he knew that he wanted to get back the corridor by any means possible. In August of 1939, Hitler organized a rally in the Danzig corridor, and on 27 August 1939, Hitler made a very fiery speech in the city of Danzig itself, where Hitler demanded for the Danzig corridor from the British and French, upon which he served them a firmly worded notice which stated his immediate and absolute demand. Hitler wanted absolute control over the Danzig corridor. Over here we see a picture of Hitler's rally at the city of Danzig, where Hitler served the notice to the allied nations of Britain and France stating his demand. But why did Hitler demand the Danzig corridor? There were primarily two reasons. If you remember Nazi ideology, Nazis wanted to unite all German-speaking people into a common motherland. The city of Danzig was inhabited mainly by the Germans, and Hitler accused the Polish authorities that they were committing atrocities on the Germans living in Danzig. Therefore, he was able to raise a sentiment that he wanted the Danzig corridor back because he wanted to reunite the Germans with their motherland and save them from any foreign atrocities. The real reason Hitler wanted a Danzig corridor back is because he wanted to reunite East Prussia with the rest of Germany and construct highways straight across the Danzig corridor so that the part of Germany that was separated, East Prussia, can again be connected with the rest of Germany. Remember the policy of appeasement? As per this policy, Hitler was allowed to take over Sudetenland from Czechoslovakia, in return not expanding any further. However, Hitler broke the Munich Pact in 1939 and annexed the entirety of Czechoslovakia without any justification. This made the Allied nations question their policy of appeasement. However, they thought it would be Hitler's last demand. However, they felt that the policy of appeasement had come to a point of retirement when Hitler sent Poland a notice for the demand of handover of the Danzig territory. When the Allied nations received this notice as well, they decided to completely abandon the policy of appeasement and to pledge assistance or support to Poland against this Danzig corridor handover, and they said that Hitler was not to be given this particular piece of land. So as we saw, the Allied nations realized that the policy of appeasement is no longer going to work with aggressive nations like Nazi Germany. Therefore, British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain stated clearly in his assembly speech that if any act is done which violates the independence of Poland, and if the Poland government themselves feel that they are under threat, and the British government would be bound to retaliate against whichever force is attacking the independence of Poland. Seeing Britain's support to Poland, France also joined. Therefore, Britain and France pledged to support Poland against German invasion. So quite simply put, if Germany decides to attack Poland, now Britain and France would also join Poland in attacking Germany. So this was an agreement of collective defense, where if an aggressor nation, say Germany, attacks against another nation, say Poland, then the allies of Poland, namely France and Britain, will join Poland to counter this aggression from Germany. Notice one thing, how in this situation the League of Nations plays no role. Because if you remember, the League of Nations had been proven to be ineffective by this point. Therefore, we see now that Poland knew that Britain and France was there to back Poland up, Poland turned down Hitler's demand, which was the immediate handover of the Danzig corridor to Germany. The Allied nations decided to support Poland because they feared that Hitler was planning a full-blown invasion of Poland. They were surprisingly correct. Hitler did have a full-scale invasion of Poland in his mind. But Hitler was not at all bothered about the assistance from Britain or France to Poland. This is because Hitler knew that both Britain and France are located at a distance from Poland. And therefore, if Hitler is to launch a surprise attack, Britain and France would not have enough time to mobilize their troops or to move their armies quickly enough before they could counter Hitler's attack. Hitler would be able to invade the entirety of Poland before Britain and France could even arrive at Poland. But there was another power which Hitler was apprehended by. Hitler instead worried about Soviet or Russian intervention. Poland was situated between Germany and Russia, and Poland itself was created by taking lands from Germany and Russia. And thus Russia also wanted to take over its lost lands from Poland. Hitler feared that if he moves against Poland, Russia would do the same, which would lead to a German-Soviet clash. Hitler had no intent for that to happen. So instead, he signed a non-aggression pact with the Soviets, which promised the Soviets their lost lands in Poland in return for not launching an aggression towards Poland when Germany invades Poland. The pact was known as the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. But why did the Soviets decide to support the Nazis? This brings us again to the three-pronged ideological conflict between capitalism, communism, and the fascist ideologies of fascism and Nazism. This three-pronged ideological conflict was again a cause for more confusion. You see, Soviet Russia felt that it could truly gain from this non-aggression or Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact with Germany, as it knew that it would not even have to lose a single soldier and still get its lost lands in Poland back. At the same time, France and Britain were ideological rivals for Russia. In fact, for Soviet Russia, the Allied nations were a bigger threat than the Nazis were. Therefore, for Soviet Russia, this was not a very difficult decision, as it felt that it could counter its own ideological rivals and also gain in the process. Now that the path was clear for Hitler to move in for his invasion, all he required was a justification so that he could prove to the public that what he was doing is the right thing. Hitler was able to justify this invasion when he was able to accuse Poland and its authorities of committing atrocities against the Germans living in the area of the Danzig corridor. Hitler said that the Polish authorities are committing a genocide of the German public living there, and the Germans need to be brought back into Germany as soon as possible. And the public also sympathized for this cause, as they felt angry that their brothers and sisters are being atrocized by foreign authorities. However, this justification which Hitler came up had no fact to prove it. Hitler was still able to convince the majority of the German public, and therefore he was able to launch his invasion of Poland. On 1st September 1939, Hitler made German troops storm into Poland from all directions. The German troops moved in from East Prussia, from the mainland Germany itself, and also German-occupied Czechoslovakia. Therefore, the German troops stormed into Poland from all directions on 1st September 1939, and this they did with powerful weapons and heavy tanks. Can you answer this question? When did Germany invade Poland? Was it on 1st September 1939, 1st October 1939, 1st July 1939, or 1st August 1939? The correct answer is 1st September 1939. Now, I mentioned that the German troops stormed into Poland. This is much more than a figure of speech, as Hitler adopted his patented blitzkrieg strategy. This was Hitler's patented lightning fast war strategy, where he was able to take the enemy forces by surprise by moving very quickly and also with large contingents at one time. This is because he was able to rely heavily on motorized elements in the army. This strategy was in fact so effective that Germany could effortlessly invade Poland by the 9th of September 1939. This invasion of Poland happened so fast that the Polish authorities and the Polish army had no time to react. So as mentioned, this war strategy of blitzkrieg used all forms of war tactics and in fact did not mind employing brute forces wherever possible. This particular strategy was heavily reliant on the use of motorized force in the army. There was a heavy concentration of tanks, motorized infantry, heavy artilleries, combat engineers who were ready to fix and maneuver these weapons of war. Then also air power was significantly used in this invasion. And this entire strategy was the concentration of overwhelming force at high speeds to break through enemy lines. You can see some instances of blitzkrieg in action during the invasion of Poland, where as mentioned, heavy motorized elements, air force, and even the navy were used to break through enemy lines using overwhelming force at high speed. We will see more into the blitzkrieg strategy and how it played a crucial role in prolonging the Second World War in the subsequent lessons. However, the Allied nations did not stay silent this time around. A time for the policy of appeasement was over, the Allied nations knew. On the very next day of Hitler's invasion of Poland on 2nd September 1939, both Britain and France issued an ultimatum to Germany, stating that if Germany does not back out of Poland and does not move its troops back to Germany, both Britain and France would be forced to retaliate and also declare war on Germany. Germany responded to this ultimatum with silence. Therefore, on the next day, September 3rd, 1939, classical music was playing on the radio of London, but that was interrupted by a crisp declaration by the Prime Minister of Britain. He said, Britain is at war with Germany. And therefore, on 3rd September 1939, in response to Hitler's invasion of Poland and also his ignorance to the ultimatum which the Allied nations gave to Hitler so that he could retreat, so upon the invasion and also the ignorance of the ultimatum, Britain and France, both the allies of Poland, therefore declared war on Germany. Over here you see newspaper articles where it states that Great Britain declares war on Germany, war has been declared, and Britain declares war as Germany fails to reply to our ultimatum. So when Britain and France declared war on Germany to stand by its strategic ally Poland, we finally come to the chapter of the outbreak of the Second World War. In this lesson, therefore, we were able to look at the trigger incident behind the outbreak of the Second World War, the immediate cause, Hitler's demand for the Danzig corridor, and his invasion of Poland, which triggered a declaration of war on Germany by Britain and France, which finally brought us to the outbreak of the Second World War. In the subsequent lesson, we would be learning about the course of the Second World War, where we would be looking at the various events and battles that took place as the Second World War progressed forward. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon. You can also register for free at DeltaStep.com or download the DeltaStep app to learn one-to-one with our amazing teachers or to get access to all our 5,000 plus amazing videos as per your school syllabus. Master each topic with our adaptive practice technology. Get million plus questions with step-by-step solutions and unlimited mock tests. Get all your doubts resolved instantly. Learn via games and win amazing prizes like PlayStations and iPads. So at DeltaStep, learning is not just fun and easy, it is rewarding too. So register for free now.